Strength and Wine with Tiffany, and we're going to be talking about a couple examples of mortgage readiness and stories, because I think it's important for you guys to resonate with possibly one of the stories or listening as you are looking to purchase a home and maybe just not ready, and how Tiffany can help you. So let's start with the first story. I love it because we were actually just talking about it. I'm like, oh no, we need to do a video on it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. No, we were talking about timeshares. And we were kind of giggling a little bit. By the way, this is my first glass of wine, so I don't want you to think I'm like on glass number 5. Just so you know. You could
really the bottle's behind there with the cameraman. No, I'm just joking.
Well, maybe after, but we are still on the first one. We were talking about timeshares. And one of the things about timeshares that we were kind of giggling about is how stinking good they are at selling them. You can go in with your spouse and be like, okay, we are only going to this presentation so that we get the free trip or the free whatever it is, right? Yeah. Excursions.
And
or
how many
whatever.
times have you guys done that? You go to Mexico, you go anywhere, and they try to suck you into this damn timeshare. Yeah. And you're like, wait, but I do love you. I think it's a really good idea. Right. At first you're like, we're not doing it. We're not doing it. We're not doing it.
Well, and then, speaking of wine, I think it's a couple, bottles of champagne later. Yeah. You're like, oh my God, I've always wanted to
do this.
To do this. Yeah.
We'll do this every year.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, they give you the tour of the best looking, anyway. So we've all heard of, if wink, wink, or if it might be you that has gone through it. But I was talking to a lender recently, and he had a client that had applied for a mortgage loan, and was denied because of a foreclosure. And he's like, I never had a foreclosure. I mean, I have never even owned a home yet. This is wrong. It needs to come off my credit report. And when the counselors did a deep dive, they're like, oh my goodness, this was a timeshare that he had walked away from because clearly he had decided it wasn't valuable or for whatever reason. And so that's a great example, right, of something that you couldn't plan on. It's not necessarily indicative of his payment history or that he's a bad person or that, but it's those types of one-off situations that our counselors are just fantastic at being able to help with. And of course, the counselor was able to negotiate and actually look at the contract and do a deep dive on the contract. And I'm unfamiliar with how they resolved it, but they did get it resolved. And then the lender was able to help with the
loan. I had to do a video on it because I'm like, wait, it's a foreclosure?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's nuts. So in your credit report, you have a foreclosure for your timeshare.
Yeah, for that Cabo vacation that you thought, Yeah.
It's funny. We just went to Cabo, and I was like, when you walk through, I'm like, you don't talk to anybody. We just go. Let's get our car and get the hell out, because they're like, so this is great. I'm like, no. I'm like, let me out.
Well, yeah. There's, I don't want to say that they're all horrible, but they're a lifelong commitment usually. It's not like a 30-year mortgage or whatever. So, but I mean, you can imagine how many one-off types of situations like that, consumers, when you're dealing with consumers that are not just textbook issues, which is why a traditional credit repair company doesn't fit the bill.
Right.
You need a credit counselor that's skilled in all the unexpected things that could be on a credit report.
So before the second story, because I know you have another one you want to share, how often should somebody be looking at their credit then?
Well, you're asking the wrong person. Well, the right person, the wrong question, because my answer is do it every day. But, obviously that's not realistic.
But is something like Credit Karma good, or how would that be looked at?
Credit Karma, I've got a million things I could say on that. Credit Karma is free. Yeah. I can say that there's a price involved in the sense that they sell your information, and that's why it's free and all the things. But it's not a lendable score.
Okay, yeah.
Right? So it's a consumer score. And it doesn't necessarily make it inaccurate. It makes it inaccurate to mortgage lending specifically. Okay. And obviously credit cards and or even auto financing, it wouldn't be relevant.
Okay.
But it's a good gauge.
Okay.
It'll give you an idea.
Okay.
We've seen the actual mortgage score swing as different as 40, 50 points sometimes from it.
Okay.
But it should give you a pretty clear picture of what's on the report.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so how would you check daily or monthly or what have you? Where should you go for that?
Right. And the reason why I sort of wink on the daily is just because, your score fluctuates, and there's people that are like, oh, I know my score. The last time I checked it was a year, but nothing in my life has changed since a year. Untrue, right? It changes. It's like constantly ebbing and flowing.
You could have got that timeshare.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
That's
right. Oh,
terrible. I didn't know that.
Or a million other things, right?
Yeah,
that unexpectedly that you're like, oh, I have to have this.
Yeah.
But the reason why I say that is if we're adulting in this day and age, your information's on the dark web.
Yeah.
And for all you know, your identity could have been used, et cetera. So it's a very important thing. But I like to look at mine monthly at a minimum. The website that I love is myfico.com.
Okay, good to know.
MYFICO. And the reason why I love it is because it gives you all the versions of your FICO score, not just your mortgage score, not just your credit card score.
I love this. Okay.
And people don't know that there's that many scores.
No.
Like I didn't know my auto FICO was different than my mortgage score.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And is that free?
It's not.
Okay.
No, you get what you pay for though.
Okay.
So, and I don't remember the pricing. I don't want to quote it. You could put it on your credit card.
Yeah. Just put it on that credit card.
Your very low interest credit card. But it's not. And frankly,
Exactly.
most websites that you would want to go to obtain the information are not free.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to look into that too. I get kind of obsessed about it all. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I like numbers, so it's fun. Okay. Second story. Military.
Actually, I do have 3 now. You asked for 3. I do have 3.
She's like, actually, I have 15.
It just triggered something. It just triggered something.
Good. Go for that.
We had a very different situation. A lender reached out and said, I've got a really weird one for you, Tiff. Can your counselors help? And of course, they always want to come to me, which I love, but it's really the counselors that do the work. But on the consumer's credit report, it showed him as deceased.
Oh, shut up.
Yeah. He showed up as deceased. And the lender's like, what do you do? I'm like, I mean, what do you do? Right. So he's like, well, I've called the credit bureaus. The consumer called the credit bureaus and was like, hello, like I'm talking to you. I am not deceased. And depending on who they talked to, it was like the most bizarre answers. Like, you're going to need to notarize that you're not, it was like, prove that you're not dead kind of thing. Like, he's like, well, how do I prove I didn't die? Like, it's like, I'm still here. There's no paperwork to show that you're still alive other than your birth certificate. Weird. So it was this very weird, convoluted scenario where essentially he had to submit all kinds of documentation through a notary, get all kinds of things done. And we were able to kind of direct the flow of that. But I'm like, it was so bizarre and so not easy. It was not an easy thing to prove that he was not deceased, which
and
you
was
would
that
think
when
is
he was looking
absolutely bizarre.
For a home?
Yeah. And ironically, he had really good credit. So it's like, I'm not dead. I'm staring at the house that I want.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a weird one.
Yeah, there are weird situations out there. And I think you just don't think that's going to happen because you're like, no, I'm just even keeled. And this is what I do. I have one car and this, I have a house or I don't. You know what I mean? Kind of weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Third story
was we had a military person. Actually, he's a Navy SEAL. And he had been deployed. I don't remember. I'll say Afghanistan for the sake of the story. I have no idea where he was. But he was overseas. And part of his orders, of course, you don't get a whole lot of warning.
Right.
It's like you're going to go do your thing for our country, this beautiful country of ours. And so he did. I don't know how much warning he had, but, he had all kinds of unpaid bills because, let's be honest, the last thing you're thinking in Afghanistan is about
paying your bills.
That cell phone bill or the thing, whatever it was. And all of his things within the apartment had been set to storage, and then he had collection accounts and all these things on there. And he wanted to use his VA loan, which...
Of course.
I mean,
why wouldn't you?
Please do. It's at least we could do is give you, opportunity to exercise that VA loan. But the counselors were able to say, listen, no, show us your orders. Let's, of course, you'd think creditors would be like, oh, okay, no problem. Thank you for serving our country. But they weren't.
I don't give a shit.
So we were able to, you'd think they would.
No.
But our counselors were able to help mitigate that for him. There's some protection laws, consumer credit laws that protect that exact scenario, which, of course, he wouldn't have known. Right. So
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
He was going to have to come back and have all these unpaid collection accounts that, and then be treated like garbage, essentially.
Sure. While he's fighting for our country.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that was my third one.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
All right, you guys. We'll chat with you later.